May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Happy Friday, everybody. You are tuned to that show, May the Best Brand Win, on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I'm your host, Scott, freshly back from vacation, somewhat tan, actually mostly sunburned, but still ready to rock and roll. And with me on the air today is the man back in the studio, fresh from moving a whole bunch of boxes on his birthday, no less, from La Jolla, California, Paul B. How's it going, Paul?
Good. Most of the move is done. We're just kind of trying to reassemble the studio. We took the whole thing apart and moved it to new offices, and now putting it all together in a new spot. So the complete opposite of a vacation.
The complete opposite, but that was you had a good birthday though.
Yep,
the birthday was good.
Yep. And where'd you go on your vacation?
I went to Kauai.
Ooh, nice.
Yes,
nice.
I highly recommend it. It's awesome. It was a fantastic vacation. I'm always good. It's fun to go away to vacation because then you when you come back you're like, yeah, I'm excited to be back. It does refresh you. It's a good thing. Well, cool. So tell me all about, Intertalk Radio has moved its corporate monolithic headquarters to somewhere else. And where are you now, Paul? How's it going?
We're still in Mira Mesa, the Miramar, right next to the Miramar, the air base over here, right across the street
nice.
from it.
Top Gun.
In fact, yeah. Cool offices, a little bit better layout than we had before, and we're now completely, separate entity. We're kind of piggybacking on WS Radio's systems that our programming was kind of mixed, but now we're flying solo. The training wheels are off, and we're off to the races.
And we can sing some Top Gun songs throughout the course of the show day.
Sure.
Oh,
no. I always go with "Take My Breath Away."
Oh, there you go. That's a chick song. All right. Well, cool. Well, if you have a question for me, you can email me at scott@robertsoncom.com. I will provide any answers that I can right here on the show. You can also find my posts, my client news, clips, and all my other fun stuff at the Robertson.com Facebook page, which a lot of you have liked and, been seen running around, which I like. Or on Twitter, you can always follow my rantings at Robertson.com, at Robertson.com. Reach out and connect with me. Hopefully you'll be entertained and get a few tips too. So today we're going to talk about bias. Sometimes communications and PR programs are supposed to change people's minds, which is a very tall order. I'm always really cautious when I see that listed as the objective. But to even attempt it, you must first really have and wear a black belt in bias. You need to understand bias. You need to understand how humans make decisions and how we all sort of rush to judgments if you're even going to have any hope of making a dent. Because a lot of this is really deep psychology. And bias is a fascinating subject. It really, really is. So today's show, we're going to dig deep into bias. And really, there's a number of different ways we could approach it, but I really want to show you how you can deal with it. You can sometimes overcome it. And maybe you can even get an audience to kind of see things your way or your client's way or your brand's way. And also, we are going to tackle, that's my football pun, who's winning and losing in the wide world of marketing communications. Very excited about football season, by the way. I'm very excited. Football season is, you can almost taste it. Preseason is over, and it's almost time to just kick this thing off, which I'm excited about. Especially with the return of my now Los Angeles Rams. Very excited to see that. But we will delve into that later maybe. Let's get into bias. So what is it? It's really defined as prejudice in favor of or against a thing, a person, or a group as compared with another, usually in a way that's considered to be unfair. Which is an interesting definition to use to drop the word fair in there. But just a word about fairness that I think helps kind of set expectations. Bias to me is a lot about setting the correct expectations. The world is not a fair place. there is nothing fair about the things that go on in this world. It's not fair that the Kardashians have a multi-million-dollar empire, and yet between the entire family don't have enough collective intelligence to probably find a doorknob and exit a room correctly. I mean, you're talking about de-evolutionary levels of intelligence with exponentially, huge levels of monetary success. That is your proof positive, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that the world is not fair, right? The world's never gonna be fair. It's never been fair at any point. It's not ever going to magically be fair. There's not going to be any time in where the Who's down in Whoville are going to be with their hands all together in a big circle around the Christmas tree singing and the world's suddenly fair. That is not going to happen. And I think that people that kind of use the word unfair and kind of shake their fists and that kind of thing have started out with sort of the incorrect expectations. Right, but bias really plays into this idea of fairness. You see it's underlying in a lot of the things when you're talking about bias. And just to kind of a quick word about people. All people are biased. We have it. We possess it with all of the information that we have taken in throughout the whole photo stream of our lives. We've also taken in all the good stuff, how, learning how to speak, how to eat, how to walk, how to, get along, how to play smoke on the water, how to do all those, incredibly great things. We've also taken in quite a bit of bias. And it's important for you to know that. It's really, really important to know that when you're dealing with people, you are inherently dealing with bias. And, some people there shouldn't be bias. We should all just be able to, not to be able to see things, completely clearly the way that, and usually people are saying the way that I see them. If everybody could just see the things, the world, the way that I see it, then we'd all just be fine. But it's not going to happen. And from a communication standpoint, it's a very dangerous position to begin with if you sort of have the expectation that, again, the things are going to be fair and that the fact that people are going to approach subjects without bias. In getting ready for today's show, I did a fun little Google search on the topic of bias. Let me see if I can find it here. And there it is. And just a few headlines just from today on the subject of bias. From CNBC today, we have the headline, Why an Algorithm May Not Fix Facebook's Trending Topics Bias Issue. And lots of stories about the fact that their trending algorithm is biased towards some stories. And baby, this is an algorithm, right? An algorithm is a mathematical piece of code. So if bias has been built in there, my money says the programmer built it in. Because I'm not aware of any computer that can develop bias on its own. There could be one out there, There's movies of that type of thing. I'm not saying there's not a, android in a laboratory somewhere that may be able to do it. But to the best of our understanding, we, look at computers as fairly unbiased, right? That's why a lot of people think they should be put in decision-making roles. I disagree because I've seen the movie Terminator. And that doesn't work out well for us. Here's another good headline. Bias alert from Fox News. And then they call out other media outlets from omitting information about something that Donald Trump did. Media bias, and we're going to spend a little bit more time on media bias in the next segment. But it's definitely out there, and you see the word accompanied with media quite a bit, to be honest. Let's see. Here's another one from Elite Daily 3 hours ago. College kid accused of rape is claiming anti-male bias, gender-based bias. It's a story from The Guardian that we might get into a little later. Talking about unconscious bias, how most women believe that sexism still exists, but most men don't, and the fact that this could be unconscious. And a lot of bias definitely could be. I mean, you are talking about the human brain, and as we've discussed many, many times on this show, That's a frontier that is far from completely mapped out. None of us completely understand how all that subconscious stuff works, and anybody that claims to is probably wrong. Just from the data, because new stuff comes out all the time. Like I said in our earlier show this year, I talked about that they just found 128 new regions of the brain that were previously unmapped. So if you're an expert on the brain and they discover 128 new regions, you are no longer an expert on the brain as of that, which is going to make you excited or you got more work to do. Gender bias. Bias is in all these different things. Bias in workplace investigations. I mean, we could talk about bias in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we're talking about it in a communications way. I did want to come back and talk about this Guardian story, which was from yesterday, which basically kind of fascinating. It's a Pew Research Center study. It found a stark difference of opinion between women and men about whether or not sexism still exists, where 63% of women believe that there continues to be major obstacles for women to get ahead, and only 41% of men feel similarly. And then the author goes on to say, author is a woman, I think. Yes, that is correct. Libby Lyons. She says, let's face it, that's part of the problem. And then, we're going to get a little bit more into that in the next segment. I want to dig into that a little bit more as we dig into bias. But right now, you are still tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. We'll see you back in a few minutes. Thank you.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, happy Friday. You are tuned right here back to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed and completely unbiased leader in music biz talk. I am still your host, Scott. Back from vacation, as we discussed, still feeling good, hanging out and discussing bias right here with Paul B. How's it going, Paul?
Pretty good.
I got cut off on my last segment. I suspect media bias for that. There was some bias.
So we're not completely unbiased, but we're trying. We could do better.
Well, cool. Well, as I was discussing in the last segment, and I kind of stumbled over the outro there, but we were talking about this study from Pew Research Center, which found a real stark difference between women and men about whether sexism still exists here in good old wrapping up the end of 2016. 63% of women believe there continues to be major obstacles for women to get ahead. Only 41% of men feel similarly. So, interesting. Bias. And, I guess they can call that, sometimes a double standard and, all kinds of other things. But the data shows, right, that there's a big difference between how women and men, see the subject of sexism, right? As a communicator, it is extraordinarily useful for you to know that, right? It is extraordinarily useful for you to have data. Good communicators are always looking at data, right? Because as I mentioned in an earlier episode, we're scientists, right? Marketing communications is a laboratory. We're in there, putting elements together and going, well, I hope that this works. Well, maybe this would be the best way to accomplish that. And we're asked to do some pretty unreal things when you think about it. The profession of marketing communications is supposed to reach people with a message, very hard to do, and sometimes to turn people around on, some very closely held opinions, which some in the industry would argue is next to impossible to do. It's an interesting subject. It really, really is. And one of the reasons it's impossible, people would say, is because of bias, either conscious or unconscious bias. So in this segment, I want to talk about, where communications is going to encounter bias and sort of what to do. And then, obviously we're going to talk about, who's winning and losing and that kind of stuff in segment 3. First, I want to talk about media bias. It comes up a lot. It's definitely out in the forefront here in the election season, as people, people that are searching for the truth, rely on the media to sort of bring it to them, right? And they have that trust. Believe me, that's the reason. One of the reasons why public relations works really well is that people are seeking, the truth. They're seeking education. They're seeking these kind of things, and they trust the media to sort of be that, quote unquote, unbiased source to give it to them. Well, when you work with the media, as I do, as a lot of people in public relations do, you realize very quickly that, they're just people. They're people that are trying to do a job. They are reporters that are tasked. They have a slate of things to write, to produce, to get out, and they have workflow just like everybody else does. And they have bias just like everybody else does. They have bias against companies. They have bias against issues. They have that because no matter how unbiased a journalist you like to think that you are, you're a human being, and you are not super capable of dismissing your own bias. Actually, you're not capable of identifying it. And I think that is a bit of the problem. I think, which we're going to get into a little bit later too, by the way. None of us like to admit that we are biased, right? You want to see somebody get defensive, you accuse them of being biased. The first response that will come out of their mouth is, no, I'm not. Right? They're not going to consider the fact that they might be biased. Spoiler alert. You are. You absolutely are. And it's okay. Allow me to give you permission to be biased. That's called being a human person. And again, as we discussed, we don't do it like machines do it. We don't have algorithms that can make completely, unbiased decisions because we grew up and we learned stuff and we took a lot of stuff with us and we still have that stuff. I'll give you a quick example. I moved out to Southern California from St. Louis, Missouri area. I grew up with a bias against California. A bias that was formed from people around me that I trusted, my parents, that basically said, and the bias went like this: everyone in California is crazy. Everybody in California, those are crazy people out there. I also had a bias that I believed that there were an inordinate amount of automobile accidents in Southern California because I used to like to watch the show Chips, and they show nothing but these huge, massive multi-car pileups. Right? And you're like, oh, it's a television show. How could a rational human being actually make the jump between a television show and believe that that's the truth? Well, when you grow up in Missouri and that's your exposure to the truth at a young age, you'd be surprised how that sticks in your head. When I came out to California, I had the thoughts in my head of this place is crazy and they have a lot of automobile accidents. You're like, did you develop your bias because you watched the show Chips with Ponce and John? Yes, sure did. Sure did. And the fact that everyone around me was telling me that California was a bunch of crazy people, right? So it's real. And I think if you're going to be real honest with yourself, you're going to realize that it's real for you too. I wouldn't recommend calling people out on their bias. It's not going to work out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's important that you know, in terms of media bias, reporters are there to tell stories. And they're going to tell their story, the way they see it, the way that they want the story to go. They're going to omit information. They're going to include information. They're going to make edits. They're going to make those kind of choices, editorial choices. Will it be fair? Well, we discussed fair. But it'll be probably their definition of fair, or what makes them sleep at night. When I work with media and I identify bias, one of the first things that I do is I try to understand it, try to understand, where it's coming from. And then we work on some strategies for, over time, how are we going to be able to work with this person, if perhaps they are, if some bias has been identified, and there's no perfect way to do it, just like you would deal with anybody. Social media, a lot of bias on social media, latest research indicates that more data doesn't help. In fact, a new study came out that said that, and I know you might find this surprising, but actually, when a fact-based article is put in front of someone who believes, let's say a staunch Democrat, is put, there's a fact-checking thing that says that the Democratic candidate, all their facts were wrong. Well, they're going to take the bits and pieces out of that story that supports their worldview, and they're sort of going to mentally discard the rest, And not just Democrats, of course. Republicans do it too. You see a lot of it in election season. You see people that are so, so caught up in sort of their, own election rhetoric that that becomes the truth for them. And they're not wrong, because it is the truth for them. What, as a communicator, when you identify some social media bias, you need to be able to, again, identify it, and then you need to be able to sort of figure out a way to deal with it. But just know that people are going to use information that you put out there with good intentions to sort of reinforce what they already believe and sort of ignore the rest. Another way that we see, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but, hiring bias. There's all kinds of stories. If you're interested in this topic on the human resources side of things, there's all kinds of studies that have been done that show that people, when people are making hiring decisions, they do it for all kinds of reasons that don't have anything remotely related to do with the job description. We are people, right? We are people. There's no, there's no Skynet hiring people. It's people. And committees of people and groups of people and that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely, bias plays a role. A lot of fascinating psychological studies, in those areas. But, the most important bias that we have to deal with is bias on behalf of the audience. If we remember at the top of the show when I talked about sometimes we are called upon to change people's minds. A group, particularly in like public affairs and the political side of things, a group may believe something to be true, but we need their support. So we need to win them over, right? How do you do it if they've already got bias against you? We're going to talk, I'm going to give you some tips for doing it, but the most important thing that you need to keep in mind as a communicator when you're doing this stuff is the fact that you want to acknowledge it, and then you want to find little ways that you could probably baby step people towards at least a neutral position. If somebody is in a completely negative position about the issue that you're talking about, or your product or your category of products, you want to start the conversation by saying, okay, now what could we do that would help move this person a little bit closer to neutral? Is there any type of education that we can do that will help move things from incredibly negative to slightly negative to a little bit negative to neutral, and then maybe have a shot one day about getting that a little bit positive, right? Education is your best weapon in dealing with bias. Knowing the fact that it's not going to work perfectly because people are going to take what they take out of it and sort of discard the rest. But I've always been a fan of using education in the in what we're doing. Hey, that's what we're talking about, bias, right here on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. Come on back, we're going to talk about who's winning and who's losing.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. You are still tuned to May the Best Brand Win here on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I'm your host, back in the saddle here and talking about who's winning and losing this week. I know this is Paul's favorite subject. Are you ready for Paul?
Oh, yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat.
Your edge of your seat. Here we go. All right, so we're going to talk about first of all, who is winning. Sweetwater actually is winning this week. Sweetwater Music Instruments and Pro Audio. After filing a trademark infringement suit against the Austin, Texas internet retailer Hello Music in March, Sweetwater Sound has now settled the matter out of court. In the lawsuit, Hello Music was said to have illegally copied Sweetwater's online content, including product information and specifications, and posting them to the Hello Music website in order to promote the sale of audio technology and musical instruments. Actually, to the point of accidentally leaving Sweetwater's name in many pages, including the phrase, "Call your Sweetwater sales engineer." So that's pretty blatant and pretty easy to prove, got to say. If you leave the other company's name in the post, Hello Music was one of my first clients when I started my company, and none of the people who hired me and are still, with the company. But actually, our job was to sort of turn around some negative perceptions that they had in the market, and we successfully were able to do that. Really an interesting story, maybe for another time. But man, just seems like they need to be dotting some I's and crossing some T's a little better. I'll put Hello Music in the losing category and Sweetwater in the winning category this week. Also winning is this crazy little Indiegogo campaign for this thing called Signal. Really interesting product. It's a watch strap that helps you field calls by making your finger a speaker for your phone in the ear. So you put your finger, you wear this watch strap, you've got your phone, somewhere else on your person, you've got your finger in your ear, and you can actually kind of answer a call and hear, through your finger. So it's from the Immodal Lab. They launched a Kickstarter campaign and Indiegogo campaign for this. They've been talking about it for a little while. Its company Signal. This thing is called Signal. Really, really cool. I'm going to put it in the winning category. That's kind of interesting. You're going to see a lot of products that start to use our this is going to sound creepy, but it starts to use our body parts as sort of an extension of technology. I saw another watch that projects your screen onto your wrist, so you could do touch screen stuff on your wrist without your actual phone, being anywhere near you. Now that's pretty cool, especially for the waterproof side of things. I mean, you could answer and take calls. Let's say your phone was inside on the counter, but you could have this. Hopefully, the watch is waterproof. Who's to say? But and you could actually swipe and stuff on your wrist. It's a little creepy. I'll give it to you. It's not like it's more than a little creepy to be swiping on things on your wrist and putting your finger up to your ear and weird things like that. But that's the way that things are going. I'm definitely going to put it in the winning category because I think it's a interesting and innovative use of the human body and technology. Okay, let's talk about losing. And man, we got to talk about Chris Brown. That where do you begin? Where do you begin? There's a funny video going around talking about what it's like to be Chris Brown's publicist, and it's a guy standing by a phone, and he's having these imaginary conversations with Chris Brown. He's like, "You did what? You punched Eminem's cat? Oh no! You did what? You strangled another person?" It's like, at what point? At what point? Is it enough? How many arrests? How many negative public relations type of stories? And at the end of the clip, it's pretty funny. At the end of the clip, he said, Chris Brown's talking with his publicist and says, "Has any of this affected my record sales?" And the publicist's like, "Nope, record sales still strong." So I don't know. But I'm going to put him in the losing category because, he's just forever known as the guy that just continues to have crazy, violent encounters with other people for reasons that only he and his publicist probably understand. I wonder how many publicists Chris Brown's actually gone through. That would be an interesting research project, is to look in and see how many people have started to work with this artist and then have realized, okay, I thought I could do this, but man, this could potentially be beyond my capacity, and I'm going to move on. Chris Brown, losing. Antibacterial soap is soon going to disappear, and I would definitely put them in the losing category. From today's news, antibacterial soaps are soon going to disappear from store shelves under orders from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which said Friday that they provide no benefits over regular soap. Products with 19 antibacterial ingredients, the most popular of which are triclosan and tricarloban, must be reformulated or removed from stores within a year, the FDA announced on Friday. So antibacterial soaps, not so effective, and soon will be able to disappear. It's interesting because obviously, it's a marketing gimmick. Antibacterial soap is, and so is a lot of things. Let's say it's your job to market soap, right? Soap's been around for a good long time. People know what it does. That's a challenge. That's a real challenge, right? I think that they are missing a golden opportunity by not going after the real target audience for heavy consumers of soap, and that's people that are germaphobes and people who have OCD and need to really scrub it up. So imagine a campaign for soap. Here's how I would do it. Imagine a campaign for soap targeted at germaphobes and OCD folks. That's like, man, you don't know what's out there. Is it really clean enough? Are you sure? Are you sure? That kind of thing. And then you couldn't sell enough of the stuff. I'm just saying. And I'm kidding. Also in the losing category, we have a Samsung. Man, problems with the Galaxy Note 7. Holy moly. They've got some battery flaws and fires going on. They've got, after 2 weeks of sales, they've already got 35 faulty phone batteries that are blowing up and catching on fire and everything else. And Samsung has issued a global recall and has promised to replace, every single unit sold. Recalls. Interesting, right? I got to say, I've had to deal with a couple of them. They're never fun. Especially ones that have to deal with people getting injured or killed, or anything like that. When you're on that side of things, it moves from just a simple recall to a massive crisis situation. But I will just give you a quick tip about how to deal with a recall. The best way to deal with a recall is not to try to spin it, is not to, and I hate that word, and I've talked about it before, but the world is far too savvy and sophisticated for your spin. No matter how clever you think it is and everything else, just the facts. Just the facts. As we've talked about in previous episodes about crisis communications and stuff, when you have a recall, you need to be very factual. Here's, we've been selling these things for 2 weeks. We've got 35 faulty phones. We're going to issue a global recall. We promise to replace every unit already sold. You're going to take your PR damage. You really are. It's going to be, it's going to be in there. But it's really, really important on a recall situation that you are very factual, that you are very sort of flat about it, and just sort of get that out there. And obviously as your competitors, start to use the information, and they might, it's obviously a conversation about product design, but it's definitely a conversation about, remember what I talked about, marketing is about long-term relationships, right? So, Samsung has enjoyed a pretty good reputation for being pretty innovative over the past few years, and really, a lot of people would say even maybe leading the smartphone market, on the Android side. But and this probably won't, derail that necessarily. It probably just, means that their, first design, had a few flaws that they, weren't intending. It will be interesting to see, how they deal with, obviously, whenever there's phones catching on fire, lawyers aren't going to be too far behind with some complaints and that sort of thing. And then that tends to make the news cycle of these stories go a little longer. But I definitely think we can put Samsung in the losing category this week, and hopefully a product recall situation won't happen for you. I'm going to in the winning category finally. I do want to talk about Bob Evans, the Bob Evans brand, which is really interesting. The story in Ad Age today talks about Bob Evans, how they are revamping their menu a bit. Sales have been down from Bob Evans Farms restaurants, and their whole signature down on the farm jingle and that kind of thing. I don't think we have a lot of Bob Evans restaurants here in Southern California, but they're really big across the Midwest and down into the Southeast and that sort of thing. But I like this approach. And folks ask me about, when you talk about rebrand stuff, I think it's really interesting. People say, well, shouldn't they just have gone and done something more, just something totally different, rather than to go back into their old, jingle and their old stuff. I don't know if that's true. With a brand, every brand's different, but with a brand like Bob Evans, I think that the nostalgia of it is really powerful. I think obviously the character of Bob Evans, and down on the farm and that kind of thing, about breakfast is really, really important. And I would put this in the winning category. I think this is going to help Bob Evans correct some of their problems that are also mentioned in the story. Check that out if you're interested in rebrands. That's who's winning and losing this week in marketing communications. Right now, you're tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. Come on back. I'm going to give you a few tips for dealing with all that bias. See ya.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on InterTalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Happy Friday, everybody. You are back on segment 4 here, May the Best Brand Win on InterTalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I'm still Scott, completely unbiased, completely unabashed, and with me on the air is the man pushing all the buttons on the cakewalk. It is a cakewalk. Paul B., how's it going?
Good. And I have so far managed to avoid any armed standoffs with the police. So does that puts me in the winning column, I assume?
Yes.
All right.
Oh my God, it's just Chris Brown, man. Somebody just need. You could do an entire show. You could just do an entire show on it and not even scratch the surface.
We should. I'm going to look forward to coming up with a graphic for that one. That'll be a fun one.
Oh, Chris Brown. You should check out that video, by the way, Paul, of that of what it's like to be
the
Chris
publicist?
Brown's publicist.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find that. That sounds fun.
I was laughing so hard. It's so funny at the end. At the end of it, he's like, any of this hurting my record sales? No, you're good. Yeah, I was just cracking up. Well, cool. We are back, and we're talking about bias. One of the things that made me want to talk about bias today was I read a recent story that talked about a new study that said you can predict a society's doom by a research framework that will actually predict a society's collapse. Stuff like that is fascinating to me, I have to say. And one of the, is reported in the Daily Mail, by the way, and it talks about different societies in mankind, how they've collapsed and, how they all started as communities full of life and growing and technological achievement, and then certain things started to happen, and then the societies kind of, died. And so this whole story is about the doom of society. And one of the things that caught my eye on the story was the prevalent, like over the top amount of bias that was sort of said in there. And I thought, well, I mean, who's to say? We all have bias and that kind of thing. I mean, is there more bias in the world today than there was in 1920? You might find it a little easier. The world's a little more transparent place, obviously, and but I don't know if that's true or not. I'd have to see some data on that. But it is a fascinating story. If you want to learn more about predicting society's doom point and all that kind of fun stuff, you can check that out and check out what they have to say about bias as well in that story. So here in lovely segment 4, I always like to give you guys a few tips that really help you deal with the topic that we're talking about. And here we're talking about bias, especially bias in communications. So without further ado, tip number 1, research first and then talk. It's really, really important, and I say that a lot, but it's really, really important that you know where your target audience stands on a particular issue. If you do know, if you have some data points, if you have some Pew Research or some Gallup poll stuff, or you've done your own research and you trust it, or you have some social media listenings and things that you trust, and those kind of things, then if you know where they stand, then you're going to have a much better chance of influencing the outcome of the conversation. You're also not going to step in something like we see some of these brands do when they don't take into account the fact that the audience may be sort of biased against them. People have bias about everything, including smartphone brands. We talked about Samsung. There's some diehard Samsung fans out there that are like, oh, well, product recall, well, I'll just, I'm sure it's just one time only kind of thing, right? Because the idea of accepting that maybe their, fervent belief in this company is shaken is sort of uncomfortable. And bias is sort of about making us comfortable with our own worldview, right? So, again, if you know where the audience stands on an issue, then you're going to have a much better chance of getting the outcome that you're looking for at the end of the conversation. Tip number 2, accept bias. All human people have it. It's really, really a part of us. And you need to know that sometimes communications just won't be able to change it. There are some people in this world that as many times as you email them or retarget them, don't ever do that, but as many times as you, communicate with them, you might not ever be able to move them. You just might not, and rather than just bash your head up against a wall, as I've seen, folks do in the industry, they're just like, I can't make a dent with this audience. I can't make a dent. Sometimes you just won't. And that goes to the whole black box of the human brain. People believe things, and sometimes they don't understand why they believe them. It could be a childhood memory. It could be, respect for their grandfather who believed a certain way, and sort of not believing what the grandfather believed is, not going to be in congruency with the worldview that person was great and that kind of thing. And that's a point of sort of mental discomfort. And so that's not going to work out, but I think the communicators need to give themselves a bit of a pass sometimes in realizing that you try to move people along sometimes, but sometimes it's really just not going to happen. Another tip, don't ever confront people about their bias. Ever. Don't ever call them out on it. This absolutely raises the shields, and any chance that you had for education is now gone. No one. One thing about people that we all sort of have in common is that none of us like to admit that we don't completely understand how our own brains work, right? And we don't. A lot of this stuff is subconscious. I don't care if you've been studying psychology your entire life. There's a lot of things in the frontier there that we do not understand. And all you need to do is, consciously raise it with someone. And, the fact that, I think you're biased, that kind of thing. Try it on social media. Somebody says, I think that Trump is going to be, Trump is going to be a fantastic president or whatever. And then some people say, I don't think so. You're just biased. You're biased. Yeah, right. It's like, no, just by using the word, we're kind of, it's an emotionally charged word. So don't ever use that. Make sure that you come from a position, especially in your professional communications, you're coming from a position of education, a position of, hey, this is what we found. This is our brand's point of view, in the marketplace. We want to educate, whether you're talking about what is the best acoustic guitar, or what's the best recording software, or whatever else. People have biases all over the place on this. Don't believe me? Let's just talk music for a second. You ever talk to a Les Paul player, Gibson Les Paul player, and say, hey, how about you play this Fender Strat? Right. Guitar players want their sound, right? And it's uniquely them. And there's not a person in the world that's going to be able to convince them past that bias. You have to bring them along. Communications must bring people along. Again, don't raise people's shields. Make sure you're always trying to educate. Tip number 4. Realize that additional reach and frequency and time will always be required when you've identified bias from a target market. If you, just in a music example, let's say you find somebody that likes Gretsch drums and you want to convince them, you're with Pearl and you want to convince them Pearl's better. Well, baby, you are going to need a lot of additional reach, frequency, and time. You're going to need all 3 of those elements, by the way. Time is important because nobody changes their mind and their bias overnight. If you're going to change it at all, you're going to be able to do it slowly over time. Very, very important to know that. I meet with clients all the time, and they want to, They have unrealistic expectations about how to change bias. It's one of the most difficult things that communicators can attempt. And if you're going to attempt it at all, you better darn well study. You better darn well know what you're trying to do and know how you're trying to do it. It is definitely 301 classes, not 101, when you're dealing with that kind of stuff. The last tip I have is just remember that it's marketing. It's not mind control. You always want to tie what you're doing in with what the audience wants to do and be in congruency with their self-image on that. And if those things aren't a fit, which sometimes they're not, then it might just be a good time to find a new target audience. Some say our bias is a huge flaw, but I really think it makes us who we are as people. It makes us fundamentally more interesting creatures. And as a marketer, you need to know what's going on in people's heads if you want to have any success getting in there yourself. Our eyes don't see one truth. Instead, they project a version of the truth that makes us comfortable, right? So make sure your company's truth, quote unquote, aligns with what your target audience wants to be true about themselves. And you will always be just fine. That is the best way to deal with bias. Again, it's not mind control. You always want to make sure that you've tied in your stuff with their stuff, your stuff with their stuff. And the degree in which that you can do that is always going to determine your success. I'm about out of time, but I really enjoy the topic of bias. Be sure to email me if you have any questions. And I'm happy to dig into it. I'm always happy to learn more. If you find some interesting articles on bias, please send them my way. That's going to really do it for me today, kids. So until next week, this is Scott Robertson signing off from May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. Bye for now.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.